You ever notice how some people grow up believing their feelings are optional? Like emotions were accessories, not actual signals? That was Alex, and it didn't start with some dramatic trauma. No, it began quietly, almost innocently, with praise. The kind of praise that feels warm in the moment, but carves deep grooves in the mind for decades. Alex was 6 when the world first decided what role they'd play. Picture a small house where the walls carried every sound, but somehow Alex learned not to add any. A kid who measured approval by how calm, quiet, and tough they could be. Their mum, Marisol, wasn't a bad parent, just a woman who survived her own storms by shutting down anything soft. And she passed that survival method down without even realizing. Alex fell off a bike one afternoon. Scraped knees, wobbling lip, tears gathering like rain about to spill. A normal kid moment. A moment that should have ended with comfort. But Marisol rushed over, panicked for half a second, before slipping into her usual script. "You're okay, right? You're strong. Strong kids don't cry." It hit harder than the pavement. Alex froze. Those words weren't said like a suggestion. They were said like a promise Alex was expected to keep. And so, in the most obedient act of childhood self-betrayal, Alex swallowed the tears. The body wanted to cry. The heart needed to cry. But the brain heard the message louder than the pain. Crying makes you weak. Weak gets you less love. That was the moment the blueprint formed. And just like that, strength became currency. Not emotional resilience, but emotional silence. Alex was praised not for healing, but for hiding. Not for expressing truth, but for suppressing it. And when a kid realizes they get smiles and head pats for being calm instead of honest, they learn to shrink their emotional world fast. It wasn't obvious at first. Kids don't have the vocabulary to say, "I think I'm trading my feelings for affection." They just adapt. And Alex adapted brilliantly. Any frustration? Buried. Any fear? Smoothed over. Any sadness? Locked up so tightly it stopped even feeling like sadness. By 7, Alex already had a reputation in the family. The mature one. The easy one. The one who doesn't make a scene. People said it like it was a compliment. And honestly, Alex believed it was. That's the tricky part. When the world praises your coping mechanism, it doesn't feel like a cage. It feels like a talent, a gift, something to be proud of. But the cost? That shows up much, much later. For now, little Alex felt like they were doing something right. Every time they held back tears or didn't complain, someone noticed. Adults were weirdly impressed. Kids liked having someone steady around. Even teachers would say things like, "You're so responsible," when Alex quietly handled their own problems. The reinforcement was everywhere. And here's the part people rarely talk about. Kids don't actually know the difference between strength and emotional restriction. They only know which behaviors get them love. Praise trains the brain long before logic does. By age 9, Alex could sense that crying in public made grown-ups uncomfortable. Showing fear made them look disappointed. Any display of hurt got labeled as drama. So why bother? Why open the door to feelings that only created distance? Silence became a strategy. Strength became a performance. And vulnerability disappeared. But it's not like Alex thought anything was wrong. Childhood doesn't give you mirrors. It gives you feedback loops. And the loop kept saying, be strong, be quiet, be unproblematic. The bike fall was only the first draft of that lesson. More moments kept adding to it. Small, forgettable on the surface, but stacked together like bricks. A lost toy? It's fine, you don't need to cry. A bad grade? You're tougher than this. A friend hurting Alex's feelings? Just move on. You're strong. At some point, Alex stopped even attempting to react emotionally. The instinct to show feelings rusted from non-use. What used to be natural became foreign. That's how emotional suppression works. It doesn't feel like shutting down, it feels like growing up. But this is where the story quietly shifts. Because while Alex's outside world applauded their composure, the inside world was learning something else entirely. When I hurt, I am alone. That idea, fragile and invisible, begins to shape the kind of adult a child becomes. And as Alex moves toward school, toward friendships, toward a bigger, louder world, that quiet lesson starts taking root in ways nobody expects, especially Alex. Because being the strong one, it never stops at childhood. It follows you. Growing up has a funny way of turning small lessons into full-blown identities. For Alex, the lesson was simple. Strength equals approval. And once school entered the picture, that idea didn't just stick, it multiplied. School is like a social pressure cooker. Everyone gets sorted, labeled, and fitted into roles before they even understand what's happening. Some kids become the troublemakers, some the comedians, some the overachievers. Alex became the stable one. The kid who didn't freak out, didn't melt down, didn't make noise. Teachers loved it. In the classroom, Alex was the student who kept it together when others cried over broken crayons or group project drama. When kids bickered, Alex stepped back. When chaos erupted, Alex stayed calm, or at least looked calm. Nobody realized that looking calm was just another version of swallowing everything down. But to adults, that looked like maturity. Alex is so composed. Alex never makes a fuss. I wish more students were like Alex. Every compliment reinforced the script. And let's be real, what kid doesn't want to be the one teachers like? When you're young, adult approval feels like a golden ticket. It makes you feel special, even chosen. So Alex doubled down on the behavior that brought the praise. The problem was, kids mimic what gets rewarded, even if it hurts them. At recess, Alex became the conflict diffuser. When friends argued, Alex became the unofficial therapist. Whenever someone cried, Alex was the one sitting beside them, quietly steady, like a little emotional anchor. But here's the part no one saw. Alex had no idea how to express their own emotions. They only knew how to manage everyone else's. It's weird. Becoming the strong one often means you learn the emotional weather patterns of the people around you better than your own. Alex knew exactly when to comfort a classmate, when to stay quiet, when to nod, when to distract. But when it came to their own feelings, blank space, static, a language they never learned. And because Alex never asked for help, people assumed they didn't need it. Kids who cry get comfort. Kids who shout get attention. Kids who break down get support. Kids like Alex, they get responsibility. Suddenly they're the reliable friend, the one who carries group projects, the one teachers trust to help the struggling kid, the one parents point to and say, "Why can't you behave like Alex?" It sounds flattering until it isn't. Because praise for being strong isn't just praise. It's training. It tells a kid, don't burden others. Don't add weight. You're supposed to hold weight, not share it. And so Alex grew up carrying more than a child should. Like the time a classmate had a breakdown during a field trip. While everyone panicked or complained, Alex stayed with them, gently talking them down, basically acting like a miniature counselor. Teachers later said, "Alex, you're such a rock." And Alex absorbed it like a commandment. or the time Alex's own science project got ruined by accident, and instead of crying or getting upset like any normal kid, Alex just swept the pieces into a box and said, "It's fine." The teacher called them remarkably resilient, not realizing Alex was just repeating old survival patterns. These little moments stacked up, and each time Alex got praised, the emotional cage got thicker. The ironic part? Alex wasn't naturally emotionless. They weren't inherently stoic. They just learned that showing softness made people uncomfortable, while showing strength made people grateful. So by the time middle school rolled in, Alex wasn't just trying to be strong. They were the strong one. The role wasn't an act anymore. It became instinct, reflex. But something else was happening underneath. Something subtle. Alex started losing track of what they actually felt. When someone asked, "Are you okay?" Alex reflexively said, "Yeah, of course." Even when the answer was no. Even when the knots in their stomach were too tight to ignore. Even when loneliness, frustration, or sadness flickered inside. Feelings didn't register as things to express, only things to manage quietly. Being seen as strong felt good, but being required to be strong felt suffocating. And that pressure? It wasn't going anywhere. In fact, it was about to grow. Because if childhood is where the script is written, adolescence is where the script gets tested. Hormones, identity, friendships, heartbreak. It's emotional chaos. And someone who spent their whole life swallowing feelings? If childhood trains you to hide your feelings, then adolescence is the exam you're absolutely not prepared for. Suddenly everything is louder. Friendships, insecurities, crushes, fears. They all hit like emotional surround sound. But Alex? Alex walked into this storm with the emotional toolkit of a brick. Teen years are weird. Everyone is trying to figure out who they are, what they feel, and why everything suddenly matters so much. Tears happen. Anger happens. People slam doors over nothing. Some talk for hours about feelings they barely understand. That's normal. What wasn't normal, but felt normal to Alex, was not feeling any of it clearly. Not because the emotions weren't there, but because Alex had no idea how to let them come up. It was like living behind a glass wall. You see the world reacting. You know you should be reacting, but your own internal volume dial is stuck at 2. Alex became the teen equivalent of a quiet lighthouse, present, steady, shining just enough light for everyone else, but never revealing anything about what was happening inside. Friends leaned on Alex constantly. Jenna cried about her parents fighting. Alex listened. Marcus spiraled about grades. Alex talked him down. A group chat meltdown broke out. Alex mediated. Everyone felt safe coming to Alex with their emotions, because Alex never seemed to have any. That's the irony of being the strong one. People treat you like a container for their feelings, not a person with your own. And Alex didn't complain. How could they? They didn't have the language for what they were missing. They just kept playing the role, believing this was what people valued them for. But cracks were forming. There were moments, quiet, passing ones, where Alex felt something brewing inside. A heaviness after too many emotional conversations with friends. A tightness in the chest after getting overwhelmed at school. A sense of loneliness at night that made no logical sense. These were warning signs. But Alex didn't recognize them. To Alex, discomfort wasn't a signal to talk. It was a signal to shut down harder. At home, Marisol still praised Alex for being so grown up. She bragged to relatives that Alex never complained, never acted out, never needed emotional maintenance. It sounded like pride. But underneath, It was reinforcement of the same message. You're easier to love when you don't feel too much. Teen Alex absorbed that message deeply. There were moments that should have triggered emotional expression, but didn't. Like the time a friend betrayed their trust by spreading something Alex shared privately. Anyone else might have cried, yelled, demanded an apology. Alex just shrugged and said, "It's whatever." Inside, though, something twisted sharply, a mix of hurt and disappointment that had nowhere to go. Or the time Alex developed a crush but couldn't express it. Instead of risking rejection, Alex avoided the situation entirely, convincing themselves that they didn't really feel anything anyway. Truth was, the feelings were real, they just had no exit route. And then came the moment that should have been the wake-up call. One afternoon, during a school assembly, a student broke down on stage while talking about mental health struggles. They cried openly, shaking, vulnerable, raw. The room went silent. Teachers comforted them. Students applauded their honesty. Alex sat there frozen. Not because the speech wasn't moving, but because Alex felt something strange. Envy. Envy that someone could feel so deeply and show it. Envy that people offered them compassion. Envy that they didn't have to play strong. It hit Alex like a quiet truth bomb. I don't know how to feel like that anymore. But even then, Alex didn't talk about it. They couldn't. The script was too strong, too ingrained. So they kept staying quiet, emotionally fluent in everyone else's problems, but illiterate in their own. By the end of high school, Alex was known for being chill, balanced, level-headed. But inside, the emotional numbness was spreading, stretching into parts of Alex's personality that used to be vibrant. Joy felt muted. Sadness felt blurry. Even excitement felt distant. The emotional world was dimming. And while Alex didn't crash yet, something was definitely brewing under the surface. Something waiting for adulthood to trigger. Because school is structured, predictable, familiar. But adulthood? That's where emotional suppression gets expensive. Adulthood has this way of exposing every crack you managed to hide as a kid. It doesn't ask politely. It doesn't wait until you're ready. It just throws bills, expectations, relationships, loneliness, deadlines and self-identity at you like dodgeballs, and you're supposed to cope somehow. And Alex? Alex entered adulthood wearing the exact same emotional armor they built as a kid, polished, heavy, and welded shut. On the outside, it looked impressive. Alex held down a job, paid the bills, showed up on time, handled crises at work without panicking, was the dependable friend who helped people move, listened to long rants, and offered level-headed advice. To the world, Alex was thriving. But inside, everything was muted. Not broken, not dramatic, just quiet. Too quiet. When co-workers joked, Alex laughed, but it felt automatic. When something upsetting happened, Alex handled it, but the feelings didn't land fully. When people asked, "You good?" the answer was always, "Yeah, I'm fine," because there was no alternative script. Emotional neutrality became the default setting. At first, it didn't seem like a big deal. Being calm and reliable is basically adulthood's unofficial currency. Alex felt competent, maybe even ahead of the curve. But slowly, the cost of the armor started to become obvious in places Alex didn't expect. Friendships started thinning out. People trusted Alex with their secrets, their heartbreaks, their frustrations. But nobody felt truly close to Alex, because Alex never opened up in return. It wasn't intentional, it was habit. When friends shared something vulnerable, Alex supported them, but never mirrored it. And vulnerability works like a bridge. One side opens, the other side opens. Alex kept their side closed every time. Eventually, some friends drifted away. Others stayed, but only in surface-level ways. Not because they didn't care, but because they felt like they didn't know Alex. Not really. Dating was even harder. You can't build intimacy with emotional silence. Partners wanted to know what Alex felt, what Alex feared, what Alex dreamed about. And Alex wanted to share, genuinely. But the words never came. Not because Alex didn't trust them, but because Alex couldn't access the feelings long enough to express them. Misunderstandings piled up. You never let me in. I feel like I'm dating a wall. Why don't you ever talk about what's bothering you? Do you even feel anything? Those sentences hit Alex harder than any childhood scolding ever did. Not because they were cruel, but because they were true. Alex tried to explain, but explanations require self-awareness, and without emotional language, everything came out fuzzy. I don't know. I'm just not expressive. It's not a big deal. But it was a big deal. It was huge. Whenever a relationship started getting emotionally deep, the point where two people really start bonding, Alex felt a familiar instinct. Retreat. Shut down. Stay strong. Not because Alex wanted distance, but because vulnerability felt like speaking a language they were never taught. Work life didn't escape the armor either. Alex became the go-to person for tough projects, stressful deadlines, and co-worker conflicts. Bosses loved the calmness. They trusted Alex with everything. But they also forgot Alex was human. Being the reliable one meant Alex got twice the workload and half the support. And when burnout crept in, slowly, quietly, like fog rolling into a valley, Alex didn't notice. Burnout doesn't look like flames and collapse for people who suppress their emotions. It looks like numbness, detachment, a sense that you're living on autopilot. Alex lived like that for months. Wake up, work, help others, stay composed, go home, sleep, repeat. No joy, no sadness, just functioning. The real problem? No one could see Alex's internal struggle because Alex couldn't see it either. When you've been strong your whole life, the line between coping and shutting down gets blurry. Adulthood demands vulnerability. In relationships, in communication, in dealing with setbacks. But Alex's entire identity was built on avoiding it. And slowly, silently, the armor that once protected Alex started turning into a prison. Pressure building on the inside. No escape valve. No language to understand what was happening. No practice asking for help. No belief that asking for help was even allowed. Alex kept going, kept performing strength, kept swallowing feelings, unaware that something inside was beginning to strain. Because here's the truth, armor isn't free. It always charges interest, and eventually, the body and mind collect the debt. The strange thing about emotional suppression is that it doesn't explode all at once. It leaks. It seeps. It shows up in tiny moments. Moments so small you almost miss them, until suddenly they're everywhere, and you realize the armor you've been wearing your whole life isn't holding the way it used to. For Alex, the first cracks didn't look dramatic. They weren't breakdowns or panic attacks. They were quiet disappointments, small miscommunications, and subtle moments of emotional distance that slowly piled up like dust on shelves. It started in relationships. At first, everything seemed fine. Alex was attentive, caring in all the practical ways, driving across town to help someone, listening for hours, remembering important dates. But emotional closeness, that was the missing ingredient. Partners would ask simple questions like, "What's on your mind?" Did that upset you? Why do you seem distant? What do you actually want? And Alex's answers were always the same. I don't know. It's fine. It's not a big deal. I'm just tired. None of those responses were lies, but none of them were the whole truth either. They were placeholders, patches over emotions that Alex didn't know how to access. Over time, the people Alex dated began to feel like they were trying to build a life with someone who lived behind one-way glass. They saw Alex clearly. Alex couldn't see themselves at all. One partner, in a moment of exhausted honesty, said, "I feel like you're always here physically, but emotionally, you're somewhere else." Alex didn't get defensive. They just didn't understand. They genuinely didn't know how to be emotionally present. It wasn't a choice. It was an absence. Then friendships began to strain. The same friends who used to confide in Alex started pulling back. Not because Alex did something wrong, but because relationships require reciprocity. Support has to flow both ways. But Alex never shared. If a friend asked, "Are you okay?" Alex changed the subject. If someone invited Alex to open up, Alex froze. If someone said, "Let me be there for you," Alex felt guilty, like accepting help was breaking a rule. Eventually, some friends realized they couldn't be close to someone who never let them in. So they drifted. Others stayed, but the friendship stayed shallow, functional, but not intimate. Alex felt lonely, but it was a quiet, confusing kind of loneliness. The kind that whispers, something is missing, but you don't know what questions to ask, much less how to fix it. Work added more pressure. Being the strong one meant Alex got the toughest assignments, the most emotional co-workers, the longest hours. Supervisors loved Alex's ability to handle anything, but nobody can handle everything. Alex started feeling stretched thin, emotionally drained without understanding why. A co-worker would break down in the office, and Alex helped them. Another co-worker would vent, and Alex listened. A group project fell apart, and Alex held it together. But the emotional labor wasn't being matched by any emotional support. Alex never asked for it, and no one offered, because everyone believed Alex didn't need it. Inside, something started tightening, like a rope slowly pulling taut. The real turning point came out of nowhere. One night, after a long day at work, and an even longer conversation comforting a friend through a breakup, Alex came home and sat in the dark. No music, no lights, just silence. For the first time, Alex felt overwhelmed. Not dramatically, not hysterically, but quietly and deeply, like a pressure in the chest, a heaviness in the ribs, a sense that everything was too much, but with no way to express it. Alex tried to identify the feeling, but nothing came. It was just weight, a weight with no name. That's when the biggest crack appeared. Alex realized they had no emotional vocabulary, no words for sadness or stress or anxiety or longing. Everything simply registered as, "I'm fine," or "I'm tired." And tired was winning. Relationships felt colder, work felt heavier, life felt flatter. And for the first time, Alex couldn't maintain the illusion that everything was under control. The armor wasn't working anymore. Something inside was demanding attention, something that had been ignored for decades. And once that pressure starts building, there's only one place it leads. Breaking points rarely look like the movies. There's no dramatic collapse, no screaming into the void, no thunderstorm symbolic enough to land in a soundtrack. Real breaking points, they slip in quietly. They arrive disguised as just another day. And that's exactly how Alex's came. It happened on a Tuesday, because of course it did. Tuesdays are the emotional dead middle of the week, the place where burnout and routine shake hands. The day started normal enough. Rushed, morning, muted coffee, an inbox that looked like it was breeding overnight. Alex went through the motions, answering emails, calming a frustrated client, mediating a co-worker dispute. The usual. But something in Alex's chest was off. A tightness, a buzzing under the skin, a sense that everything was tilted just a little bit, like the world was 1 degree to the left. Most people would name that feeling. Stress, anxiety, overwhelm. Alex didn't have those words. Alex just felt weird. Still, Alex kept going. Because that's what strong people do, right? They push through, they keep their head down, they handle it. Until a moment so small, so absolutely insignificant, finally broke the entire foundation. It was late afternoon when a co-worker, one of the high-strung ones Alex always helped, asked if Alex could quickly look over something for them. Nothing urgent. Nothing impossible. But something in the request hit differently. Alex felt their chest tighten. Their throat felt hot. Their brain felt foggy. But they nodded anyway. Habit. Then, as Alex opened the document, it happened. Not an explosion. Not a meltdown. Just a wave. A sudden uncontrollable rush of emotion that made no sense. Not sadness. Not anger. Just everything, all at once. Like the last 20 years of swallowed feelings lined up at the door and demanded to be let out. Alex didn't cry. But the urge to cry came, sharp and undeniable, which scared them more than the emotions themselves. Because crying wasn't in Alex's vocabulary. Crying wasn't an option. Crying felt like losing control of a system they'd spent a lifetime perfecting. So Alex did what they always do. They shut down. Except this time, the shutdown didn't work. Their vision blurred. Their breath sped up. Their hands shook. The room felt too loud, too bright, too close. It wasn't drama. It was a panic response. The body's way of saying, "Hey, you've been ignoring me for 20 years and I'm done asking nicely." Alex closed the laptop and left the office without a word. Not angrily. Not dramatically. Just gone. They sat in the car afterward, hands gripping the steering wheel, staring at nothing. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Alex couldn't tell. Time felt stretchy, like it didn't know what shape to take. For the first time, Alex realized something terrifying. They had no idea how to calm themselves down. No skills, no tools, no practiced method. Strength had always been about holding everything together. Now that everything was falling apart, Alex had nothing to hold on to. Eventually, Alex drove home. The apartment felt foreign, like they were walking into someone else's life. They sat on the floor, not because they planned to, but because their legs just folded under them. And then, the moment that had been postponed since childhood finally arrived. Alex cried. Not loudly, not theatrically, just quiet tears, hesitant at first, then steady, then unstoppable. And here's the heartbreaking part. It wasn't the current stress Alex was crying over. It was the years of never crying, the years of swallowing pain, the years of being the strong one, because nobody gave them permission to be anything else. Every moment of childhood silence, every teenage numbness, every adult relationship they couldn't fully step into, every time they wanted comfort but didn't ask, every "I'm fine" that wasn't fine at all. All of it came pouring out in that tiny apartment on a Tuesday over a work request that didn't matter. It wasn't a breakdown, it was a breakthrough, ugly, necessary, raw. And when the tears finally slowed, Alex felt something unfamiliar. Space. Not peace, not clarity. Just space, like the first crack in a sealed room letting in a little bit of air. But breakthroughs don't fix everything. They just force you to acknowledge that something needs fixing. And that tiny bit of space? It opened the door to the next step, the one Alex had avoided for years. Because after a lifetime of being praised for strength, Alex was about to do something infinitely harder. Learn how to feel. If the breaking point was the crack in the dam, then what came after was the slow, trembling release of everything Alex never knew how to feel. And relearning how to feel isn't heroic or cinematic. It's uncomfortable, awkward, and honestly kind of embarrassing at first. But it's also the first real step toward living instead of just coping. Alex didn't wake up the next morning, transformed. There was no epiphany, no grand promise to change, just a deep exhaustion, the kind that sits in your bones. But something had shifted. For the first time, Alex didn't pretend everything was okay. For the first time, "I'm fine" felt like a lie Alex couldn't get their mouth to say. And that silence, that refusal to default to old scripts, was enough to make Alex realize they needed help. The word therapy floated into Alex's mind like an uninvited guest. A word Alex never considered, never thought applied to people like them. Therapy was for people who felt too much, not people who felt too little. But something in Alex's chest whispered, "Try." So Alex did. And of course, even the first step was painful. Making the appointment. Just calling the office felt like confessing something Alex didn't have language for. But they did it. The first session was rough. Alex sat across from the therapist, a calm, patient woman who seemed to understand silence better than most people understand words. And Alex froze when she asked, "What brought you here today?" Alex stared at the floor and said the only sentence they could manage, "I think something broke." It was vague, but she nodded like she knew exactly what it meant. And then she asked questions Alex had never asked themselves in their entire life. What does stress feel like in your body? What do you do when you're hurt? What were emotions like in your family growing up? How did people respond when you were upset as a child? Alex didn't have answers. Not because the memories weren't there, but because Alex had never looked at them through that lens before. They'd never connected the dots between childhood praise and adult numbness. The therapist didn't push. She just waited. And in that quiet waiting, Alex felt something unfamiliar. Permission. Permission to slow down. Permission to not know. Permission to be confused, fragile, messy. Things Alex had never been allowed to be. The unlearning began slowly. Therapy wasn't a magical fix. It was more like emotional physical therapy. Tedious, repetitive, sometimes painful. Alex had to reintroduce themselves to feelings the way someone reintroduces movement to an injured limb. Naming emotions felt like learning a new language. Alex practiced recognizing tension in their shoulders, knots in their stomach, heaviness in their chest, physical sensations that were actually emotional signals Alex had ignored for years. They learned that numbness isn't absence, it's overload. That shutting down isn't calm, it's protection. That strength isn't lack of feelings, it's the ability to feel without collapsing. Every revelation felt small but important. Every session untangled another thread. One week, Alex learned how sadness had always been mistaken for tiredness. Another week, they recognized how anxiety masqueraded as productivity. Another week, they confronted the guilt they felt for needing anything at all. It was messy. Sometimes Alex left therapy feeling proud. Sometimes they left feeling like they had no idea who they were. Sometimes they cried in the car afterward for reasons they couldn't articulate. And yet, they kept going. Changes started showing up in Alex's relationships too. The first time Alex admitted to a friend, "I'm overwhelmed," their voice shook. But their friend didn't recoil or get annoyed. They actually softened, leaned in and said, "Thank you for telling me." It was tiny, but it rewired something inside Alex. The first time Alex told a partner, "That hurt my feelings," they thought it would start a fight. Instead, the partner apologized, genuinely, and the relationship felt deeper afterward. Another rewiring. The first time Alex asked for help, actual help, they expected rejection. Instead, people stepped up eagerly, almost relieved that Alex finally let them. Another crack in the armor, this time on purpose. Slowly, Alex realized something profound. People never needed Alex to be strong. They just wanted Alex to be real. Strength had been a shield, blocking intimacy, connection, and authenticity. Vulnerability, the thing Alex avoided their whole life, wasn't weakness. It was the doorway to everything Alex secretly craved. Support, closeness, understanding, humanity. And something else happened too. Something subtle. Alex began feeling more joy. Not huge, explosive happiness. Just small sparks. A warm moment during a conversation. A laugh that felt real instead of polite. A sense of relief after expressing something honestly. Relief becomes addictive once you realize you're allowed to feel it. Alex wasn't healed yet. Not by a long stretch. But for the first time, Alex wasn't living behind glass. And once you've tasted what it feels like to exist without armor, there's no going back. Healing doesn't have a finish line. There's no moment where someone stamps a gold seal on your forehead and declares you emotionally complete. What actually happens is something quieter, slower, and much more real. You start living differently. And that's where Alex found themselves. Not healed, not perfect, but finally living instead of performing. It began with small choices. Alex noticed that, for the first time, they were pausing before defaulting to, "I'm fine," not answering on autopilot, actually checking in. Some days the answer was still, "Yeah, I'm okay." But other days, Alex found themselves saying things like, "I'm a little overwhelmed. I'm actually stressed today. I'm excited about this. That upset me more than I expected." Simple sentences. But for someone who lived most of their life in emotional silence, they were revolutionary. Tiny revolutions, daily. Relationships reshaped themselves. Friends who once hovered at the edges of Alex's life began drifting closer. Because now, Alex wasn't just listening. Alex was sharing. People finally felt like they knew Alex, not the role Alex played. And something surprising happened. People trusted Alex more once Alex got vulnerable, not less. Because vulnerability wasn't incompetence, it was authenticity. Partners felt closer too. Conversations weren't just practical or logical anymore. They had texture, emotion, humanity. Arguments didn't feel like distant negotiations. They felt like two people actually working through something together. When Alex said, "I felt hurt," the world didn't collapse. In fact, connections deepened. The intimacy Alex had feared their whole life became something they began to crave. Even work changed. Alex stopped being the emotional dumping ground for everyone else and started setting boundaries. Not harshly, just honestly. "I can help, but I'm at my limit today. I don't have the emotional space for this right now. I need to take a break." And the wildest part? People respected it. Because strong boundaries didn't make Alex less dependable. They made Alex more human, more sustainable, more real. Alex wasn't burning out anymore. They were pacing themselves. But the biggest shift wasn't external. It was internal. One evening, months after that breaking point, Alex was sitting on a park bench, watching the sun melt into the skyline. Nothing dramatic was happening. No crisis, no tears, no revelation. Just peace. And out of nowhere, the thought appeared. This is what strength actually feels like. Not a numbness, not silence, not suppression. Strength felt like being present. Strength felt like empathy, for others and for themselves. Strength felt like knowing their limits and honoring them. Strength felt like finally being able to say what they needed, wanted, feared, hoped for. The old version of Alex thought strength meant holding everything in. This new version learned that strength meant letting things out without shame. Redefining strength didn't mean rejecting the past. Alex didn't blame their younger self, didn't blame their mother, didn't stay angry at the years of emotional hiding. They learned something crucial in therapy. You can appreciate the role your armor played while still letting it go. The armor kept Alex safe when they were a child. It protected them when expressing feelings wasn't an option. It shaped them, yes, but it didn't have to define them forever. Letting go of it wasn't betrayal. It was evolution. Alex's new identity formed slowly but surely. Someone who didn't run from feelings anymore. Someone who embraced vulnerability instead of fearing it. Someone who still cared for others, but now cared for themselves too. Someone who understood that real strength isn't about emotional silence, but emotional courage. And maybe the most beautiful part? Alex started feeling everything more intensely, not just the bad stuff. Joy landed deeper, laughter felt brighter, love felt fuller, life felt richer. The final lesson? Being praised for strength your whole life can teach you to hide your humanity. But reclaiming your feelings, your voice, your softness, your truth, that's how you build a life that feels like yours. Alex didn't become someone new. Alex finally became someone whole. And the story doesn't end here, because this kind of growth isn't a final chapter. It's a lifelong practice. But now Alex walks into that future, not armored, not numb, not silent, but fully human.